Hello, my fellow patriots. This is Alex with Disabled Vets Perspective, and this is episode 4 of Inside Veterans Affairs. My cohort and partner in crime is not going to be joining me tonight. We had their tube and the Google hiccups giving us trouble. So what we're going to do is tomorrow night at 6 o'clock Central, 7 Eastern, we will be doing a special, and we're going to be going over the new Healthcare Act through the VA. We're going to be comparing it to the old one, and we're going to be doing an hour-long episode tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Hey, Bobby, it's good to see you, buddy. Just to let you guys know, Deplorable Bobby will be going live right after me. So if you guys haven't subscribed to him or checked him out, it's Deplorable Bobby, the way I see it. And he will be going live right after my stream is over. Tonight's episode, I want to give it just a minute and see if I can get some more people in here. Hello, Belinda. She will be joining us in the chat. So that's good. And now you can have some input. Hello, Ashley. Thank you for joining me. We have a mod on board so we can take care of those nasty critters if they ever show up. Tonight's episode is going to hit some points about PTSD. This is PTSD Awareness Month, that people are unaware of some of the things that go on with people that have post-traumatic stress disorder, which is PTSD. So this whole episode is going to be based on information that I've been able to obtain from military.com, and also I'll be giving you my input. Belinda will probably fire off some questions in the chat. For those just coming in, Belinda wasn't able to join me live because their tube and Google hiccups was giving us hell. Tomorrow we will be doing a special at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, 6 Central, on the new Veterans Healthcare Program. Compare the new one to the old one. So anyway, go ahead and get started with this. According to military.com, the articles are as follows. The first one, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, can occur following a life-threatening event like military combat, natural disasters, terrorist incidents, serious accidents, or violent personal assaults like rape. Most survivors of trauma return to normal given a little bit of time. However, some people have stress reactions that don't go away on their own, or may even get worse over time. These individuals may develop post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. People who suffer from PTSD often suffer from nightmares, flashbacks, difficulty sleeping, and feeling emotionally numb. These symptoms can significantly impair a person's daily life. Personally, it can, in me, my person, I've been able to understand it and to learn how to modify my lifestyle to compensate for the problems that I have myself. PTSD is marked by clear physical and psychological symptoms. It often has symptoms like depression, substance abuse, problems of memory and cognition, and other physical and mental health problems. The disorder, they keep calling it a disorder. It's not a disorder. It's a trigger. We don't have something wrong with us. We've had a hyper vigilant button pushed in us that causes us to operate at a level of awareness that probably exceeds most people. And the hyper awareness and vigilance that comes with it puts us in a different category. It's not a disorder. It's an activation. But if you are suffering from PTSD or know someone who is, the following list of resources and information will help you find help in dealing with PTSD and the related conditions. Each VA medical center has PTSD specialists who provide treatment for veterans with PTSD. Plus, the VA provides nearly 200 specialized PTSD treatment programs. A referral is usually needed by your primary care to access these specialty programs. It's going to start with getting an evaluation through mental health. That's typically where you would go from your primary care. Their evaluation will determine if you go further. Um, let's see. That one is that's basic description of what PTSD is. Now, the VA is offering treatment programs. Um, I'm going to I'm probably jumping a little bit ahead according to my list of articles, but I will tell you this: a lot of people with PTSD, they're not going to see the problem with themselves. To them, the world is the problem, and they're fine. And a lot of times, it takes a it'll take a spouse, it'll take a child, it'll take a parent. Somebody else is going to identify the problem 9 times out of 10 before you do. So it's important for the family to get involved and to help the veteran go in the right direction to start getting the help that they need. Um, it took my wife finding that I had a problem, because to me I was totally fine, and I didn't see any issues with what was going on with me. And it took her to identify it, and a push from her got me in the direction I needed to be. So I just say, as family members of people with PTSD, you're going to notice it before they do. So you need to be their first line of defense and help them to get in the direction they need to go. Hello, Michelle. Let's see. I want to say hi to some people here. Charity. Hello, Liberty. Good to see you. Ashley, Lisa, Patty. Hey, Patty. How you doing? Let's see. Got a few more in there, but they ran over the top. But anyway, it's good to see you guys. Good to see mods. I appreciate what you guys do for me. I keep my house in order and keep everybody happy and healthy. But anyway, get back to this subject here at hand. As a new generation of service members return from deployment, the Department of Defense, DoD, is faced with the challenge of identifying the most effective methods of treatment to address post-traumatic stress disorder. Prevalence of PTSD symptoms based on self-reporting surveys among warriors in the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan vary, but it has clearly been shown to be a significant problem, especially for those exposed to sustained ground combat. Again, I'm going to inject in here because it doesn't always take combat to trigger PTSD. That's a major contributing factor, but there are situations that people go through, like I read at the very beginning, where the PTSD can be turned on because of situations outside of the combat zone. Mine, I had a lot of my stuff that I went through in the military deeply suppressed in the back of my mind, and I was able to keep it asleep, so to speak, until I went in for back surgery. And when I came out of surgery, my physician conveniently forgot to put pain management on my chart. So somewhere between 14 and 18 hours post-op, I laid in bed with not so much as an aspirin. That event brought darkness to me. That's what really brought everything that I had suppressed forward and took me to places that I didn't want to be. But again, I didn't think that I had the problem, even though my switch had been turned on. I didn't realize it, and it took my wife noticing it. She noticed it a long time, but she kept her mouth shut about it. And when she finally did say something about it, it was almost too late for us. So when she gave me the push, I went and I did what I needed to do. So don't ignore it. Don't say, well, maybe he'll get better. Do what you have to do to help the person that you care about. Make sure that you get them in the direction they need to be. It is important because it takes a support group to survive anything, and the family is the support group. Um, there are several treatment options that health professionals and clinicians can use to effectively treat service members with PTSD. Since there are a number of factors to consider in treating PTSD, examples, access to service, availability, safety, patient preferences, etc., it is important to understand the different types of treatment available to service members. I've already pre-read this, and in a most serious way, it's laughable. Uh, but PTSD is absolutely not a laughing matter. But sometimes when I hear the government version of fixing a problem, it's a little difficult to read. So I'm going to go through this and got to stay in character. But it's hard to read this without being a little bit amused. Okay. Says, as with all disorders, successful prevention of PTSD may be more desired than even the most effective treatment. To the extent that traumatic experience themselves may be avoided, PTSD may also be prevented. In the immediate aftermath of a traumatic exposure, prevention interventions are available, including psychoeducational, brief counseling, and uh, prophylactic medication. Although some of these are promising, none have yet been proven to prevent PTSD. So they're throwing everything at it with no idea how to really fix the problem. A number of early interventions have been utilized for the prevention of PTSD. The most promising of these are public health or population based interventions informed by the evidence supporting cognitive behavioral therapy for PTSD. Psychological first aid is one example of a promise. Early intervention, similarly, a growing number of well-controlled studies have demonstrated the efficiency of early CBT based exposure based treatments as an early intervention. Interventions such as these may decrease the likelihood of a person's developing PTSD after traumatic exposure. However, additional research is needed to demonstrate this. For one reason is because it's in a very well controlled study. I don't care how well controlled a study is, reality is what needs to be studied. Um, if they want to talk about immediate aftermath counseling, they need to have the docs on the field that are prepared to deal with soldiers coming straight out of a combat situation or dealing with somebody that is immediately affected by the situation. So let's see. Critical incident stress debriefings administered in compulsory groups has been shown to be ineffective. And that's true because being in the military, there's an element of pride, there's strength, there's I'm a soldier. Hear me roar. I'm not weak. I'm not bothered by this stuff. Meanwhile, they go back to their bunks and their barracks, and it eats them up. So, trying to get a group of soldiers to sit and talk about the things that are bothering them, that's wag the dog kind of stuff. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to get it out of them. So, anyway, PTSD treatment options. The main treatments for PTSD are counseling, known as talk, therapy and physical psychotherapy, medications, or both. Although there are a number of treatment options for PTSD and patient response to treatment varies, some treatments have been shown to have more benefits than in general. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is one type of counseling. With CBT, a therapist helps the service member dealing with PTSD understand and change how thoughts and beliefs about the trauma and about the world cause stress and maintain current symptoms. The table below describes several types of CBT. Now, it's a type of CBT, overview, and components. Prolonged exposure therapy. This one bothers me. Imagine exposure, repeated and prolonged recounting the traumatic experience. I have an issue with this because when you go through an experience that takes you to a dark place, you don't want to be going through that experience over and over again. So instead of getting a release, you get an introvert. You take that soldier and he closes back up and goes back to the dark place, and that's it, because you're running him through the trauma over and over and over again, or her. To me, I think that's insane. I think that instead of that, you need to be aware of what you've gone through, and you need to be taught how to deal with the way things are now, not what you went through. You don't need to go through it over and over and over again to heal from it. You need to be able to put it in a box, stick it back where it can be out of the way, and then you need to focus on the now and surround yourself by the people that care and move forward instead of repeating the past. So that's my opinion about repeated exposure. I don't agree with it. In vivo exposure, systematic confrontation of trauma related situations that are feared and avoided despite being safe. Okay, on this one, uh, in some cases, we might be talking about fear. Uh, in other cases, we're not talking about fear. I don't have fear, and I know that's really hard for people to understand, but I've been through so much that the two things you fear in life, you fear death and you fear pain. Those are the primary mortal fears that humans experience. Well, I've I've been to my pain threshold, and I went to sleep. I passed out. So as soon as you pass out, the pain's gone. And I died when I was young. I drowned underneath a sailboat and was clinically and medically gone until my father brought me back. He was a physician, thank God, because he knew how to do it. But at that time, it wasn't uncomfortable. I didn't panic. To me, there was an element of comfort. So I've lost the concern of fear. So I try to explain that the best I can, but I know some people just can't comprehend not being afraid of anything. But the goal with those first two programs, the repeated prolonged recounting of traumatic experience and the vivo exposure systematic confrontation of trauma related situations, that the goal with this is to increase emotional processing of a traumatic event so that memories or situations no longer result in anxious arousal to trauma, escape, and avoidance behaviors. Now, I can I can see what they want to do with the goals, but I found I had to go through all the psychotropic drugs and all the counseling and everything that came along with it. But over the last several years, I've weaned myself off of these things because instead of just sitting with a blank face and not living anymore, just being controlled by psychotropic drugs, I've learned how to adjust my behavior and my activity around my limitations. And it means missing out on some things that some people might consider fun, but I don't go into crowds, because I'm going to tell you now that 90% are better. I mean, I'm throwing a number out there, but it's got to be way up there. These people that have PTSD will not go into a crowd. You need to be in environments where you can maintain control of yourself and of the amount of input that you're going to have to deal with from the environment. Um, One thing for me personally, if I go places, there's an element of primate behavior in people, and especially males. Um, it's always looked at, if you look at somebody in the eyes, then it's construed as a threat. Um, Personally, if I'm walking through a group of people, I'm going to look every single person that I confront. I'm going to look them in the eyes, because you can tell a lot of what is on somebody's mind by looking in their eyes and understanding the assessing what's going on around you. Some of this stuff may be over exaggerated as far as not necessary, but it's the way I've learned to deal with my personal situations. Hey Georgia, how you doing? Good to see you. Um, Cowboy Rides too. Got you in here too. And let's see, the American. Yes, we are Americans here. Um, Good to see you guys. Looks like I've got a pretty good crowd. Um, where's my number in my chat? I don't see it. Just out of curiosity, so can one of my mods throw that up there, because I'm curious how many people I'm getting to tonight. I'll look in a second. All right, cognitive therapy. Modify the relationship between thoughts and feelings. Identify the challenge incurred. Let's see. Identify and challenge inaccurate or extreme automatic negative thoughts. Go to go find a happy place. That's what they're telling you to do. Be nice if that was the case. It helps. Uh, Develop alternative, more logical or helpful thoughts. That one I can kind of concur with. You need to 17. Great. I know another thing that's 17. Q. Sorry. Q followers out there. All right. Help the individual recognize. This is under the goals of this last part, modifying the relationship and all that. Help the individual recognize and adjust trauma related thoughts and beliefs. Help the individual modify his or her appraisals of self and the world. Yeah, when when somebody loses self worth, um, they go to they go to dark places. They get dark thoughts. Um, it's important to, you know, always show the love, always keep them close, remind them all the time, because it is important. Rebel Jack, in the fourth or so grade, we did a project in school where we covered half our face and nose down and had to guess each other's emotion in the eyes. Pretty much what you said as an excellent experiment. Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting, because you can see, you can learn to read a face, you can learn to read emotion, you can assess a threat. There are things you can do, and I kind of, I really jokingly refer to my wife as my service animal, and I, it's she's very important to me. She helps me to deal with the situation, and this goes back to me saying that the family sees your issues perhaps more than you do, and when we're in a place and she can see that I'm getting a little bit overwhelmed by what's going on around me, if I'm starting to feel like there's a loss of control, she will see that, and all of a sudden my hand will be grabbed and out we go. And that's what I mean when I say service animal. She's better for me than anybody else because she sees the things that trigger me as quickly as I do, and she moves to get me out of the situation. So it's important. Like I say, your family is your number one source for your help and for your support. So you need to really stick with them. Um, Stress inoculation training. This is another category under the prevention and treatment. Provide a variety of coping skills that are useful in managing anxiety, including muscle relaxation, breathing, retaining and role playing, as well as cognitive techniques such as guided self talk. So they want you to have foreplay and talk to yourself. That's what I got out of that. Although the role playing, I don't know, that's probably not necessary. Anyway, may also include graduated in vivo exposure. That's going back to the reliving your event over and over again. And again, I think that's bad advice. If I was talking to people that were studying in school to become shrinks, I would tell them that they can erase that one and start again because I believe that's bad. I mean, my opinion. Again, I've told you before. I'm going to give you facts. I'm going to give you opinion. In my opinion, I think having to relive a traumatic event over and over and over again until you become numb to it is not a good choice. Coffee again. It's what's for dinner. Actually, on Father's Day, we had a great lunch. And happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there and all you mothers too. Good to see you guys out there, and I hope you guys had a great day. Spending it with me is pretty special. Um, let's see, Alex, that is what my professor said. She doesn't agree with that tactic. Charity, that's good. That means she's got a good head on her shoulders because I'm going to tell you, when you've been through something, the last thing you want to do is go through it again and then go through it again and again. I'm telling you, you want a trigger, that's a trigger. So I'm going to get off of this because some of these that are on here, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Yeah, sleep. Now, that you just, in my opinion, you just have to learn how to deal with less sleep because I'm usually up until 2 or 3, sometimes 4 or 5 in the morning. And then I'll get a few hours in the morning, and my wife gets me up between 9 and 10. And sometimes I feel rested, sometimes I don't. Most of the time I don't. It's because my sleeping is usually pretty shallow. If somebody comes into the house that I'm not aware of, I can be instantly awake before they ever say a word. It's just a change in the environment that will wake me up. So sleep is always an issue. Let's see. Sorry for the dead air. This isn't radio, but it says coping when PTSD brings you to a dark place. And some of that I've gone over with you on my personal feelings. Everybody's different. Everybody's affected differently. Some people can learn to modify their activity and their behavior and realize that PTSD is here. You are going to have to deal with it the rest of your life. So instead of trying to suppress it and trying to override it, you need to understand it and then be able to modify what you do to make it so that you can function in life with PTSD and not try to remove it. You're going to miss out on some things that maybe you used to like to do, but it's kind of like if all of a sudden you developed a peanut allergy and you had to stop eating peanut butter. I mean, that would be almost the worst thing that could happen to me. That would be devastating, but it happens to people, and you learn to live without something that's a primary enjoyment in your life. Well, my 100-pound beast just did the old computer nod. Um, my pop still gets horrible, heartbreaking, horrible nightmares. At rare times he is asleep. It's heartbreaking. Yeah, the nightmares are a problem. Um, Again, for me personally, I pretty much stopped dreaming years ago. Um, I sleep primarily in a pitch black darkness. Very, very occasionally, I get asleep enough to go into a dream state, but it's very rare. Um, let's see. This is a story about somebody with post-traumatic stress disorder. It's apparently it was military.com by Michelle Rosenthal. My first client, Sabine, was a suicidal 50-year-old woman with post traumatic stress disorder. She was clearly in a very dark place as a PTSD survivor who has had her fair share of imagining suicide to escape PTSD symptoms. I understood what Sabine meant. However, in my recovery, I discovered that the road to freedom from PTSD symptoms had success that replaced those dark thoughts with thoughts about what I would do when my life and mind were my own again. It goes right to what I was saying. Learn how to live with it, to modify your life and your behavior to live with it. Sabine and I dove headfirst into a work of recovery using traditional and alternative processes to decrease feelings of trauma and increase feelings of safety and control. Working together once a week for 18 months, we reached our goal. Today, Sabine is not only free of thoughts of suicide, she's free of PTSD. No, she's not. You're never free of PTSD. She's free of PTSD symptoms, is what it says, too. Okay, sometimes you got to read further. All right, PTSD symptoms can bring people to a very dark place. Emotionally, seeking professional help is a vitally important step in the PTSD recovery process. In addition to that, people can acknowledge and treat symptoms of depression. Now, depression is definitely something it's going to be associated, but it's not always going to be part of PTSD. Um, that's one of the mistakes that I make. I don't believe that everybody with PTSD is suffering from depression. Um, I think that they are two different things, and when they treat them separately, they're going to have more success than when they try to treat them all together. Uh, let's see. Looking to see what else we got in here. Charity, when I hit the top right three dots, I have share, block, or cancel. Oh, okay. Very important to be. What is, I'm not sure, Patty, what DXED is. Maybe you could, it might have been a mistype. Okay. Well, Americans on his phone. Phones are evil. Okay. People with PTSD get depressed about their situation. While depression can make you lethargic and lack of motivation for change, there are some ways of treating depression naturally that can make a difference. Other ways include incorporating exercise into your routine, eating and avoiding certain foods, taking vitamins, and even looking into light box therapy. Very interesting, light box therapy. My father, uh, I lost my father about 5 years ago, but in his last several years in medicine, he did medical research, and seeing this light box therapy reminds me of a conversation we had about light stimulation, and that it's being introduced for uh, people with bipolar depression, and in the cases of PTSD, it can also be used to turn off a trigger, so to speak. Um, Light frequency and color is what they're using, and it works to, I don't know to what extent, but they're having positive outcomes with it. Anyway, I threw that in there because I found it interesting, because one of our last conversations about medicine that I had with my dad was talking about light therapy for PTSD. Let's see. Remove temptation to take extreme steps. One veteran I know who lived with PTSD and traumatic brain injury shared that when he began to feel suicidal, he took actions to create his own intervention. For example, he removed all firearms from his home. Now, we went over this, me and Melinda, we went over this with the firearms about 2 weeks ago, that uh, the idea of veterans thinking of shooting themselves, yeah, it happens with the guns, but it's not even in the top three. They make it sound like it is. But this idea that if you have PTSD or if you have symptoms of depression, you shouldn't have a gun in your home. I'm absolutely against it. I think it's insane. The two of them don't jive. Uh, Other veterans have told me they have stopped drinking or flushed unnecessary pills into this, and they started to feel better. Now, that's good. Um, you shouldn't you shouldn't have to try to bury something. You should learn how to create a lifestyle that you can learn to live with it. And I think once they start doing this, I mean, I don't have a medical degree in psychology, but I have experience that people who study psychology are never going to have. So I think that part of fixing a problem is getting people that understand the problem to talk to other people that have the problem. And Jervis, thank you. I noticed you just put my email address up there, and I would encourage you, if you have questions, comments, or otherwise, and you don't want to put them in a public stream or thread, use my email, and I'll respond to you. Just don't correct my spelling, because if we did math, that'd be great, but my spelling sucks. But seriously though, if you have any questions for me, or if you need help finding the right place to be in the VA, then by all means use my email. I'd put my phone number too, but most of the time my phone during the day rings with calls of people wanting to sell me insurance and to fix my credit score, or to let me know that my cousin Prince in Dubai left me $1 billion. And so I tend to let my phone go to messages anyway. So you're better off just hitting me with an email, because I end up seeing that before I would even open my voice call messages. But no, I don't. I just don't want to put my phone number up there. It's the cell phone. They're ridiculous. They're evil. But use my email. All right. Now, this is important. It says share those dark thoughts. And if you can, it's a good idea to do that. But only confide in the person that you trust the most. And if you are capable of group therapy, then I would say go for it. If there are limitations that you have, such as uh, classification, I think I've been over this before with me. I maintained a security clearance that put me into places where most people don't go, and because of that, the option for talk therapy was greatly diminished, because the person that I was sent to talk to didn't have a clearance. And um, in that situation, I was told my discussion ends by somebody else, and that I was no longer allowed to discuss my activity with a counselor. So if you have those kind of limitations, from my own personal feelings, I don't know what to tell you. Uh, just be positive with yourself, and if you have things you can talk about that are not classified, then by all means do that. It's a tricky situation. They got to get people that are um, they need to get psychotherapists that have security clearance that are capable of talking to soldiers and other people that have done things that are above the pay grade, so to speak. So that's what I'll say about that. At first look, it may seem weak to admit an internal struggle that threatens to overwhelm or our ability to cope. And that goes with the I'm a soldier, hear me roar. And with anybody, people don't like to admit defeat, or they don't want to admit when something is bothering them because they might have to drop their wall of strength, and uh, you know it's almost a surrender. I will tell you, talking about PTSD, it does work on me a little bit, but it's important to get it all out here. And I smoke cigarettes. I used to drink. I used to do the stuff to try to suppress until I learned how to recognize and to work with what I have. So I still have a crutch, and that's okay. If you need a crutch that doesn't take away your ability to function, then by all means, do what you have to do. Um, Rev up your brain's executive function. When the lower and mid brain structures, those attuned to threat and emotion, overthrow your frontal cortex, your brain lacks its ability to focus, inhibit reactionary emotions, and make choices in your best interest. Practicing meditation and mindfulness can greatly improve your brain's executive function because it engages your prefrontal cortex, and that's just changing your thought process. Um, and sometimes that can be done externally by, again, the support network, your family. Um, you got to lean on them, and if there's anything at all, if you're married and you've got that one in your life, if sometimes you got to throw your head on a shoulder and cry, that's what you got to do, because that should be the one place where it doesn't matter. Um, get all the support you can from family. That's the trick, and accept that support. That is the other thing. No, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. No, you're not. You need to sit down, shut up, and take the support from your family. It makes a difference. What do I need to feel a little bit better? One of my favorite methods to interrupt deeply dark thoughts is the employment of a simple process of asking one question. What do I need to do to feel a little bit better? Peanut butter. No, sorry. Like I said, sometimes the only way to deal with this stuff is to kind of give a little bit of a laugh. But it's a serious tip, and I'm the kind of person who always wants to put humor to things because it doesn't always have to feel so dark. But in some cases, I'm dealing with a rough subject, so I can understand if some of my humor I might interject would be bothersome. But anyway, focusing on the answer plus how to get it, and then repeating the question until you move your mind into a more resilient place, resilient space, can shift you from powerless to powerful. In this new space, it may be possible to address the real pain driving the dark thoughts, and from there find ways to reduce or even eliminate it. Um, what that's talking about really is thought therapy, and you might be able to do that on your own, just taking yourself from a dark spot to a better place. Um, Maybe you can't. Maybe you've allowed yourself to get down too dark, and that's where family can step in, because they can start asking you the questions and try to change the way you're processing thought. Um, it'll make sure. So, hello, Nachos live stream. How are you? Um, Shonda, good to see you. And DM, huh, she came here this week. I'm so happy. Oh, and Alex is so quick witted and funny. Yeah, I try. Shucks. I'm not going to blush on live TV. It's just not going to happen. Tough guy. Yep. Okay. All right. Let's see. I'm done with that one. So I'm going to go to this is an article on how to recognize PTSD. I'm gonna in this situation, like I said, the person with PTSD is not always going to be the one that notices it, and very likely they'll be one of the last ones to notice it. They just, they're just tired, they're just angry, whatever. They don't see it as an issue. I'm just edgy today. It's no big deal. So recognizing it as a family member is important. All right, so it says this time of year we see lots of ads for red roses and romantic dinners. So I'm guessing this one was probably Halloween. Oh no, I meant Valentine's Day. Um, while those are certainly important components of romance, lasting love involves two people taking care of each other. In some marriages, that may include being alert for signs of PTSD. 100%. With the hustle and bustle of everyday life, it can be hard to know when your partner is struggling. Pay attention. Don't be so busy in your life that all you're doing is passing each other at the door on your way to work. Um, you got to work. Everybody needs to communicate, and I think there'd be less divorce and separation if people spent more time concentrating on each other too. In our daily interactions as couples, we sometimes misunderstand each other. Tensions arise and we fight. Then we withdraw from each other. This is a normal interactive interaction between spouses, right? No, not always. Perhaps the tension you feel is because your partner is feeling the effects of PTSD. Absolutely. Um, it's, yeah, the aggression, withdrawn, sitting in the dark, some of the same things that you might see with somebody who's fighting with depression, um, a eliminating stimulation, like no music, no TV, no conversation, just basically allowing your brain to shut down and fighting it that way. I think that's a mistake. Um, you gotta keep in the fight. My famous punchline at the end of my shows: stay in the fight. It is important. It is not always easy to figure out if someone has PTSD, but there are some signs that can clue you in. In some cases, it can be very obvious. For instance, if your service member returns from deployment and is still having difficulty falling asleep, wakes up in a cold sweat, and punches at an imaginary foe months after he or she returns, PTSD may be the culprit. Yeah, you want to. This one might sound ridiculous, but I tend to sleep facing away from my wife because of the concern that if I do go into a deep sleep, that I may end up reacting in my sleep, and so if I'm facing her and I end up throwing a punch, I'm liable to cause injury, and that would be devastating. So I tend to sleep on my back. I mean, it helps to have my back broken in so many places because I can only sleep on my right side of my back. So it limits my ability to move around too much and worry about that in itself. Um, let's see. In other cases, the signs might be as obvious, might not be as obvious. Your partner could gradually withdraw from activities and people he otherwise enjoyed. You might notice him having nightmares and difficulty falling asleep. He might feel emotionally numb and could appear anxious, worried, angry, or moody. When the symptoms are milder, it can be difficult to tell. And the difference between everyday stress and PTSD. That goes to, I'm a soldier, don't worry about me, I'm good. Um, a lot of people are good at hiding stuff, and it's the awareness that will allow you to find what's hiding. Just knowing your partner, knowing your children, and in that case, so it's just paying attention. Um, Becky Tyler, wow, divorced after 30 years. I can't even imagine. Wow, that's unfortunate. Uh, hey Raymond, good to see you. Yeah, Belinda, PTSD is not fixed by Motrin. That's an inside military joke, and I'll explain it to you. Um, the the at the military hospitals, when you go in, you can have an arm hanging off and being held on by one piece of skin, or you can go in there with a toothache and you're going to get 800 milligram Motrin. Here, take this; it'll make you feel better. So everybody that's dealt with military hospitals knows the old here, take some Motrin trick. Uh, it's it's sort of an inside joke, but that was funny. PTSD, here, have some Motrin. All right, here's the main difference. Everyday stress doesn't last long. Your partner may feel out of sorts, anxious, and have trouble sleeping because the stress of his or her life, problems at work, or in the relationship. The stress is temporary, okay? The stress resolves and doesn't affect everyday life in a significant way. It also may not follow the particularly traumatic event. This is not the case with PTSD. PTSD symptoms continue for longer than the average stress episode. Yeah, um, and I will say when you get triggered, I've got to define what triggered is. There are flashpoints. There are things that uh, maybe you're going you're going somewhere and you find yourself surrounded, and you don't see an exit. You may feel encapsulated or confined, and at that point you become triggered. You need an exit, and it's going to happen, or things are going to get rough. So you find your exit, and that's where, if I'm starting to get edgy, if I'm getting people around me and they're closing in on me and I can't see my way out, that's where my wife a lot of times will just grab me and whoosh me out the door, and that's good. That's working as a team to fight something that you may not be able to fight by yourself. So again, I keep reiterating, you know, if you are couples, if you're looking after your children that come back from war or whatever, you become their peripheral brain and their all seeing eye. Pay attention to them. Pay attention to the environment. Talk to your partner, your spouse, your parent, somebody. Explain to them ahead of time what things make you feel especially edgy. Um, don't go to those things if you can help it. Um, but if you can't help it, then make sure that your partner is aware of it also, because that'll help them to pay attention to you as well as what's going on around you. And it can make life easier. You will do better if you can combat it as a team. So, anyway, let's keep going. Signs to watch. In most cases, PTSD sets, what am I at? 4 minutes?
Four, six,
Huh?
6 minutes.
Okay, I got 6 minutes. I got to dump out in an hour because after an hour and 46 seconds, for whatever reason, mine shuts off. So I didn't get to all my articles, but I've done as much as I can. Anyway, in most cases, PTSD sets in after a traumatic event has taken place, such as the violent death of a friend or family member, combat experience, or natural disaster. It also lasts. It doesn't just go away, and it affects their everyday life. You may notice your partner has recurring nightmares or thoughts about a traumatic event. You may see trouble sleeping and eating, or have a marked increase of anxiety and fear. And fear can also be aggression. Okay. Some people translate fear differently than others, and aggression is one of the primary things. And I'm not scared of it. It just makes me mad, So that's what you got to look for too. Your partner may be on edge, easily startled, and over alert. At uh, at other times, he could appear depressed with low energy level, memory loss, and a lack of focus. He may have difficulty making decisions and avoid people, places, or activities that would normally make your spouse happy. You may suddenly feel like you are walking on eggshells, afraid you might set him off. Eh, I think that communication can help with that. You begin to worry that your partner is no longer himself. He may be suffering from PTSD, and it is not his fault, nor is it your fault, but he does need the help. Interact, communicate. I'm down to 4 minutes. Let me take the last 4 minutes and see what you guys are saying in the chat. Um, Becky, I'm glad this helps. Um, I'm glad you got the therapy. I'm glad it helped. It's important. Um, the key to it is that we all need to learn how to correct our situation the best to our ability. If that is that input from other people, or is that learning how to and modifying your own personal activity? That's how I deal with mine. Um, you know, we learn to deal with it. Thank you for being this topic on your channel, Alex. I'm glad I could help, Ashley. It's an important one to me. Um, I try to make sure that I'm talking about things that I'm directly involved in. The veterans program, VA hospitals, clinics, all of this is directly involving me. So I guess you would call it, equipped to talk about it. So, anyway, Liberty, I'm glad you joined me. You're quite welcome. Yes, get help. Becky, that's true. Becky Tyler says get help. And if you don't see yourself as a problem, listen to the person that's closest to you. When they say you have a problem, you have a problem, and you need to move forward and start getting it addressed. Um, yes, thank you, Alex. I would love to help somehow. Um, Helping other people that are going through the situations is one way to do that. I'm down to 3 minutes. Well, I'm watching her because she's normally doing it. Let's see. Thank you for posting that DM. Awesome report. All right, I'm glad I could do that for you, Georgia. Anyway, I'm going to call that pretty much good, unless you guys have something real quick for me. I got to dump out in about a minute and a half. Raymond, I'm glad this was a good chat. I'm glad you joined me. Um, Thank you, CLC. I'm glad to see you. Hey, you know what? Let me do something for you right here, CLC. You've been modded. You're like the mod. So now you get to be one of those. Anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it. I hope I helped you guys. I hope you have some more information about PTSD and you can go forward with your information and maybe help others. And until tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central, Belinda will be with me, computers allowing, if we don't have a problem, and we'll be back then. But until tomorrow night, y'all, stay in the fight.